All right, everybody, welcome to another week of the Site Owner Academy. This is Dan Sfera. We've got Chris Sauber. We are talking today about the future of clinical research and converging technologies in the industry. And how's it going, Chris? What's going on your end of the thing?
Things are going fairly well. Being locked down and all, it's not too bad. Kind of just a new way of life, getting used to it.
Yes, yes. So are you excited about the future of clinical research and converging technologies in the industry?
Am I excited? Well, to a degree. I think it will actually make doing the studies a little bit easier. I think there'll be some people upset about it initially, as all people typically, well, not all, but many people typically are with new technologies. But I think it'll actually enhance research.
Yeah, as usually happens, right?
Yeah. hmm
All right, so there's actually a lot, and we're going to do a webinar on this most likely um, this month. But there's a lot to get into. Not that many slides, but a lot of in between the lines dialogue. So on the first slide, you'll see the technology changes in clinical research, and technology has really created new opportunities for sites to conduct clinical research. We've got decentralized and virtual trials. This is the whole premise of this is to help the patients, and I think COVID, we saw that as a necessity. Now it's going to be interesting because we're kind of in between. So we're in between, like almost getting back to normal, hopefully pretty soon, versus just continuing virtual trials and telemedicine. And you can argue there's an argument for both, either the traditional way of doing trials to just come back, which is already kind of doing. I'm kind of leaning towards that. But there's also going to be studies where they're using a virtual model. So I think the two can coexist. I don't think just one has to replace the other or
Sure.
be the dominant force. I think both can coexist.
Well,
What
I
do you think?
certainly don't. Yeah, absolutely. I think certain trials, there's just no way you can do them virtually. Whether it be there's too much imaging or there's too much physical evaluation. Um, so there's just no way they can be done virtually. But many of the trials absolutely can be done virtually. So I completely agree. I think there'll be moving forward some sort of combination. That some trials will be both virtually and in person. Others will be entirely virtually, and then many will be entirely in person. So
Right.
that's what I would envision seeing moving forward.
Yeah, and what do you think the industry wants, like pharma?
Well, if they could do it, it'd all be virtual. But if they
Right.
had their way with it, but because I think it is a little bit cheaper in terms of personnel costs, I think. You don't have to send
Yeah.
CRAs to the sites, so you're not paying travel fares and or airfare and hotel and food and all of that. So costs are
Right.
reduced.
Right.
And
I think
that's
access to the patients is really, and this is kind of what we've always been saying, but access to the patients is kind of what's keeping the traditional model
and that
afloat.
doesn't
And I
change.
don't. Right. Yeah. And I don't see technology changing that because virtual trials, you still, whether it's virtual or traditional trial, you're still going to need access to the patients.
Yeah,
And the drug
absolutely.
companies are not good at getting patients. Like that's not what they do.
Right. And I would completely agree. So really the benefit again to the sponsor is less expenses. And not a great deal, but certainly some, right? What do you think they save on expenses? 10% maybe? Doing something virtually opposed to in person?
I think it's a lot more than that, honestly, what they
Yeah.
save.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
but
25%. So even so, but and that's great for a business to save 25% on overhead. But like you're saying, they still have to have the patients, and the sponsor's not going to have a means to get the patients. So they still require sites.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's always interesting to kind of, and it'll be fun to go in depth on the webinar on this. Virtual trials are becoming more common. Okay, these trials use technology to conduct patient visits at the home of the patient or online. Some trials are considered hybrid trials. You know, one of the things I have noticed with not virtual but remote. So I'm monitoring in the middle of COVID. I'm a contract CRA, and one of the things
Mm-hmm.
I'm noticing, maybe it's just something I'm noticing as a CRA, but the sites that are using remote, like telehealth, for example, they're losing patients at a higher rate than sites that are still seeing them in person.
So
So I
that's
think
kind of
there's
surprising.
something yeah, there's something about the act of going somewhere that maybe it's just anecdotal. I don't know. Obviously, it's anecdotal evidence, but I'm noticing the patients that are being seen by doctors on telehealth are dropping out of studies uh, higher rates than the ones that are coming in to see the doctors.
So I have a question because see, I would envision it to be the reverse, right? It's
Right.
less challenging for a patient if they can do it from home opposed to going somewhere. So
Right.
the clarifying question I would have is: do you know, are the patients being paid the same just to do the visits from home
Uh,
opposed to come to the office?
the studies I'm monitoring are oncology, and I don't think they get paid.
Oh, so they didn't get paid at all. So that's no factor. Well, that's very
Yeah.
interesting because I could see that happening because a lot of patients obviously they're not supposed to participate because of the payment, but many do.
Right.
Uh,
Well,
I
also
could
the patients they're not just dropping out. I mean, they're dropping out because, it's oncology and unfortunately they're getting adverse events but they're dropping out on their own will, right? It's
right.
not the PI dropping them out. So, yeah, they may be having adverse events like, with cancer, you get all kinds of AEs,
Mm-hmm.
but usually the patients kind of stick through it. But what I've been noticing is the telehealth patients, because I have one site that's full telehealth, the other site that's uh, in person. I'm noticing like these AEs are common amongst cancer patients, and I'm just noticing a little bit of a higher dropout rate on the virtual visits.
Mm.
Like, I think it's easier for the patient to withdraw, like doing it over the video as opposed to in person and telling the PI, hey, I don't want to do this study anymore.
And they have less
It's
of a
like,
maybe they have less of a relationship with the individuals, the staff. Whereas when they are
yeah, yeah,
in person, they
yeah.
kind of
So
develop a relationship.
develop a relationship, maybe feel a little more invested in the study
Right.
because they're actually seeing the people,
Uh oh.
as opposed to like on video. I don't know, something there, definitely something there. So that's just a little interesting takeaway slash side note. Which again, it's not proof of anything. It's just what I'm observing. Some trials are considered hybrid, so this is what I'm explaining would be because they are obviously they're using sites. The patients do go in for the treatments, right? But then for the follow-ups, they don't go in. They just for the safety follow-ups, they just do it remotely. So that's hybrid might be something going forward, but we're so early in this stuff. But the next slide, I think this is here to stay, and it's electronic source, and it's one of the newest developments in research, relatively speaking, and sites are beginning to see the benefits of using eSource. I mean, one of the biggest benefits is that the monitors can just remotely access the source, right, without it being uploaded anywhere. It's just in the cloud. And then another benefit is the coordinators, they don't need to print papers or anything like that. It's all done on handheld devices, and headers are filled out automatically, and the dates are time stamped, so there's no Alcoa-C violations. There's a lot of benefits to eSource. I'm very bullish on eSource, and I think it has brings a lot of efficiencies to the site and the monitoring levels.
I would agree with you. I'm bullish on it as well. I'll even be more bullish when they patch it into an EDC. And I think some already have, but when it's
Right.
directly connected to the EDC, so you enter it in the source, goes directly to the EDC. And I would think sponsors would want to do this because some of their expenses are paying coordinators to enter the data into EDC, so they can eliminate that expense.
Sponsors would love that because you're getting the data entered in real time as opposed
Yep.
to waiting for a coordinator to enter it, right? So
Yep.
yes, I agree. And I think that's next. I think that's definitely in the next couple of years
Mm-hmm.
we'll be seeing that.
Yep. I would agree.
So anything else on eSource? I like the eSources where they integrate like everything for the site as well, like the CTMS. They integrate a budget layer on top of it, so the site can kind of see revenues.
Mm-hmm.
The site can kind of see when patients are due to come in. There's a lot of benefits to these eSource platforms besides just the eSource. And
You know
then
what would be
electronic regulatory too, which is not really a slide here, but electronic regulatory, the same thing. And by the way, any site can use electronic regulatory for free with the Viva Vault.
Mm-hmm.
Viva Vault has a free e-regulatory.
You know what would be nice? Another component that I'm sure nobody is offering is so you were saying the CTMS offers to the sites, what payments they're due or what patients or, visits haven't been paid for or invoices, is if that was coupled on the sponsor's end as well. So both of the sponsor and the site can see what is owed, when it's been paid, when it will be paid. You understand what I'm saying? So the sponsor's updating this too in real time, so the site can see what's going on from the sponsor end.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they already have systems like that, kind of, where you do these invoices electronically. What's the name? I think it's Greenfire, maybe. I think that's what it's called.
Where they pay the patients?
No, yes, they do that, but I think maybe I'm thinking of the wrong system. But yes, Greenfire pays patients, but also the site files invoices, electronic invoices that the sponsor then pays that way. You don't email them an invoice.
Right. Okay. For invoiceable items, right? Like screen failure, transportation costs.
Exactly.
Things like that. Okay.
So maybe set up a system where it's for both, right? Sponsor and sites.
Right. Yeah, I agree. E-regulatory. So the slide 4 is recruitment and electronic source. So one of the least expected benefits to eSource is that sites can potentially find new ways to recruit. Essentially, sites can use some of the time that eSource frees up to pursue new recruitment strategies. But there's also a lot of these vendors, like Creo is one that's our favorite. It actually has a patient recruitment and retention tool. You have to pay a little extra for it, but it will text your patients when they're in the study to remind them of their appointments, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it also has some recruitment components as well. So you can, like the people you pre-screen, you can also put them on this texting list and, have them get notified of the study opportunity, which is really cool. It's a feature that you got to pay extra for, but it's definitely really cool. There's another vendor that does just this. They're called Mosio, Mosio, and they're also just focused on retention and recruitment with automated texting and things like that. So that is definitely something that's pretty cool.
It's funny. I just helped a client last night fill out a feasibility questionnaire, and one of the questions she didn't know how to answer was, "What are your retention and recruitment sources or resources?" So yeah, I mean, it's great. Her answer could have been, if she was using Creo, these items.
Yeah, yeah, automated texting. You
Yep,
can
for
even do the
retention.
automated dialer. Like
Yep.
when you have an appointment with your doctor and a machine calls you and tells you have an appointment, they do the same thing. I think Mozio does this,
Hmm.
but texting is better. I prefer texting as a patient, and I think most patients do as well.
Yeah, I do too. I get those
Uh,
texts.
yeah, from a CRA perspective, eSource allows for monitoring easier, right? They don't even need to come in
Hmm.
to the office and in real time. And also something that's missing from this is the PI oversight, which maybe that's on the last slide. And if it's not, it should be. So patient safety is the last slide, which is basically PI oversight. So PIs are busy, and it's really nice for the PI whenever they want to kind of get a overview of their study, and at any level they want, whether it's the macro level or the individual patient, and then even the individual assessment level. The PI can just log in from their mobile phone or from their computer, wherever they want, any mobile device, any device with a mobile browser or a browser with internet connection. They can keep oversight of their study, and they can go in there and put notes if they want. They can sign things like labs or ECGs electronically. So it's really helpful for the PIs. PIs really like this. Um, and then that leads into the last slide, which is patient safety. So patient safety is always the first thing to consider, regardless of the impact that the technology may have on research. eSource facilitates patient safety oversight at the sponsor level, usually from the monitor, and then, like I said, from the PI. Decentralized, virtual, hybrid, or other forms of research must be designed in such a way that patient safety is always the focal point, and then any future research technology must take the physician and patient relationship into consideration. So this is kind of what I've been noticing with the retention rates, right? Even that face-to-face interaction, you can't replace in-person face-to-face. Like Zoom is close, or telehealth platforms are close, but it's not the same. You don't, even when you're doing like a telehealth visit as a patient, you don't see the nurses, you don't see the other staff, right? And so they lose out on opportunities to keep you in the study, really, if they can, like as long as it's safe for you. Of course, patients can withdraw at any time, but I'm noticing that just a little bit of that retention is lost, at least from my experience, my personal experiences with monitoring these studies during COVID. We thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll catch you all later. Bye bye.